In this video, you will learn how to implement a headless contact form using Next.js and Gravity Forms. You'll learn how to create a form, handle submissions, and implement validation. Now, to get started, you will need a WordPress site with the Gravity Forms plugin installed and active. You will also need your license. So once you have that, we can move on and create a new form. Here I've just created mine, but let me show you what it has. So I've added first name, last name, email and message, and made all of them required fields. Now once we have this, I can go to settings, and what I want to do is actually activate the REST API. So here I'll just check the box and then hit update. Okay, so this is pretty much all the setup we need in WordPress. So now we can move on to Visual Studio Code. Here I just have a clean Next.js project. So what I'll do first is actually install Shadcn, which is a library for pre-designed components, so we don't lose too much time styling. So here what I'll do is just run npx Shadcn add latest init. Okay, here it's asking me for a base color. I'll just choose slate. And since we are running React 19, it asks us to pass this flag. So let's hit enter. Okay, so now once that is installed, we can just add the individual components that we'll be using. So let me just run npx Shadcn at latest again, add, and here I'll just pass button for a submit button, input, text area, and label. So let's install those. Okay, so here you'll notice we have this new components folder. So next what I'll be doing is actually add a new component, which will be our contact form. So I'll do contact form.tsx. Okay, and here I'll just do export function contact form. Okay, so what I'll do now is return, and let me just paste our form structure so you don't watch me type all of this, but I'll go through it once we have it here. Okay, so here we just have our form, and then inside we have contact heading, and then we have our fields. So for each field we will have a label and our input or text area, and in the end we have our submit button. So first let me just import these Shadcn components so it stops complaining. So we need label, input, text area, and button. Okay, so this is what our form looks like. And now the main thing to notice here is that our field names need to be in this particular format. So the name will be input followed by our Gravity Forms field ID. So notice how first name, the name of this field is actually input 1. So y1. So let me just go back to our Gravity Forms and hit edit, and here whenever I click on a field, you'll notice here on the sidebar there's this note that says ID colon 1. So this is the field ID. So it's 1 for first name, it's 3 for last name, 4 for email, and message has an ID of 5. So these numbers we need to use in our Next.js form, so they map correctly when we send the info through the REST API. So that's why first name is input 1, last name input 3, email input 4, and message input 5. So just make sure they match. Okay, so once we have our contact form, we can actually show it in our Next.js app. So here I'll just run npm run dev to start our application. And let me just move this to the left, and let me just go to localhost 3000. Okay, so this is our starting Next.js app. What I'll do now is actually remove this code. So I'll go to page, hit delete all, and then I'll do export default function homepage. And here what I want to do is show our contact form. Contact form. Okay, let's import that and hit save. Oh, and I forgot here to add return. So let's see it. Let's do that. Okay, so we now have our form. Now notice it's on the top left side. So what I'm going to do actually is I'll add a main outside contact form so we can give it some styling and have our form centered. So let's do this, and I'll just do class name flex min height of screen and items center and justify center, and we'll just give it a different background color, slate 200. Okay, so now we have our form centered. Now obviously if I click send, nothing happens. This isn't connected to our WordPress form just yet. So that's what we'll do next. Okay, so in order to handle validation, we're actually going to create a server action. So let's go to app, to source, and here I'll just do new file, and I'll create a server folder with an actions.ts file inside. Okay, so here what I'll do is we need to add use server at the top. So Next.js knows these are server actions, use server, and then we can just define our action. So I'll do export async function, send form data. So this will receive form data of the type form data. Okay. And here what I'll do is I'm going to add a try catch block. So I'll do try and catch error. Here what I'll do is just console console.error. I'll do error submitting form, and I'll do error. Okay, and I also want to return a message so that the user knows something wrong happened. So I'll do return, and I'll do message, and I'll just do an unexpected error has occurred. Please try again later. Okay, so this is our catch block. So I'll go back to the try. Here what I'll do is const response equals await fetch. Here we'll have our endpoint, but I'll leave it as an empty string for now. And then I'm just going to add the method will be post, and the body will be our form data. Okay, so let me just put the endpoint. So what I'll do is I'll just copy our WordPress site URL and I'm going to paste it here. Okay, so then we just need to add WP JSON, then GF Gravity Forms version 2 forms. Now here we need to add our form ID, but let me just leave this empty for now. ID, and then we'll put submissions. So we need our form ID. To get that, we don't want to delete it. We can just go to the forms, and here you'll see a column with a number, so that's our ID. In this case, it's 5. So let me just change this ID for a 5. Okay, so this is our endpoint. Next, what I'll do is const data await response.json. Okay, and then let's just console log that data and also return it. Return data. Okay, so this is our server action. Okay, so now we'll use it in our form. So let's go to our contact form file. And here what I'll do is pass to the form action, which will be send form data. Okay, so let's do a test. Let's go to our application and hit send. And it's telling me there's no route matching this URL. So let me go back to our action and see if we missed anything. Looks like I missed an S in forms. Okay, so let's save and try again. Let's hit send. And now you'll notice the response is different. So here we're printing the WordPress we got, the response we got from WordPress. It's saying is valid, is false. Then it contains a property with the validation messages, one for each field. Here the key is the field ID, and then the value is the error. Okay, so now what we want to do is actually use this response in our form so that the user knows what's wrong, and he or she can fix it. Okay, so in order to do that, we actually need to change our contact form component just a bit. Here, what I'll do first is actually change our contact form to be client component. So I'll just add use client at the top. And the reason I'm doing this is because we will be using a React hook. So we need to make it a client component first. Okay, so the React hook we'll be using is called use action state. This hook returns state action and is pending variables, and this is equal to use action state. And now what we need to pass here is actually our action, so send from data, and then we need to pass a second argument, which will be our initial state. In this case, I'll just leave it as an empty object. Okay, so this is our action, and then here I just need to replace this with action. Now, one other thing we must change is, in order to use this React hook, we actually need to add a second argument to our send from data function. So here I'll just do previous state and give it a type of unknown since we will not be using it, but this needs to be here so that the hook works properly. So let's hit save. Okay, perfect. And here we're already using our action. So here in state, we will have all of this information that we see here in the terminal. So what I want to do next is I want to show these validation errors if they exist for each field. So in order to do that, I'm going to add right below each input, I'm going to add first to check to see if there's a validation error for this particular field. So I'll do state.validation messages. Okay, and then I just want to look if there's a first name key. Sorry, a one key, since this is the ID. So I want to see if there's a property with a key of 1. So if there is, then we can do a conditional rendering, and I will return a p tag with this validation message. So I'll just do here, remove this. Okay, and I just want to give it a class name of text destructor to give it a red color. So let's just do a test. I'll hit send. Nice. You'll notice we have this error beneath the first name field. So now I just need to repeat this for the remaining fields. So let me just copy and add it for last name with an ID of 3. So let's change this to 3. Nice. Now for email, let's change the ID to 4. And finally, our message, change this to 5. Okay, so now we're showing the validation messages. Okay, so let's do a quick test then. Oh, one thing actually, we're not using our isPending variable yet, so let's do that first. So what I'm going to do actually is I want to disable our button while our form is being processed. So what I'll do here is disabled will be equal to isPending. Okay, and actually I'm also going to change the text. So if our form is pending, the text will be sending, and if not, it will be sent. Okay, so let's move this to the left. Here, if I hit send, it happens very quickly, but you'll notice that the button changes size, so it looks like it's working. Okay, perfect. So let's do a test, shall we? So let's just do test. Let's do 1. Here I'll just do test, and that's message. This is a test. Please ignore. And let's hit send. Whoa, so what happened here? So if you noticed, I passed test as my email, which is not a valid email address. So even though the field had a value, like it wasn't empty, I still got a different validation error saying me that the email address isn't valid. But what else happened? It actually cleared all of my data from the form. So this really creates a very poor user experience because if the user has an error, then he or she will have to refill the form from 0 again. So in order to fix this, we actually are going to add something to our server action. So what we want to do actually is we want to return the same form data we received to the front end if an error occurs. So in order to do that, here I'll just do an if block to check if there are any errors. So if data is not valid, right? So that means there was an error. Then I want to add to the data, I want to append the form data that we received. So I'll do data.payload equals form data. Okay, so now we're passing back our form data to our form. Okay, so I also want to do this if we here in our catch block. So I'll do payload and then form data. Okay, so once we have this information, here what I'll do is for each input, I'll do default value will be state.payload, right? And then I want to search for the inputs1 key. And if that exists, we can just default to this value. And if it doesn't exist, that means that our form was sent successfully. So in that case, actually, I do want to clear all of the fields. So if this doesn't exist, means there was no error. And if that's the case, then I'll just do an empty string here. Okay, so let's do a test, and let's do test, test, and test, and let's hit send. Okay, so as you noticed, now our first name field wasn't clear while the others were, so I just need to copy paste this code to the rest of our fields. So I'll just do copy, then input. Here we're looking for input 3, then here input 4, and finally input 5. Okay, so let's do a test. Actually, I already have our values here. So here you can see, even though our email address wasn't valid, I still have the values I first typed. So this works perfectly now. Okay, so let's do one final test. So let's do test 3. Let's do test at email.com. So a valid email address this time around. And let's do this is a test. Please ignore. And let's hit send. Awesome. And let's just go to WordPress and see if that went through. And yes, we can see it here in entries. Okay, that's great. So one last thing I want to do actually is, you notice when we submitted our form, it just cleared the our inputs. So what I want to do actually is just show some kind of success message. So here below our button, I will add another p tag, which will be state. First, check if the state is valid. So I'll do state that is valid. And if that's true, then I can render a p tag And inside we will have state.form.confirmation.message. So this is our success message if the form was sent correctly. And also, actually, I want to add another one to check if we reached this catch block. I actually want to return the error so that the user is aware that something unexpected happened. So here I'll just do another check, and if state dot I think I put message, but actually let's just change this to error so it's clear. So error. So if state has error, then we can just render another p tag with a class name of text destructive, and here we'll just put the state.error. Okay, so now you see we have our success message here right below our button, so that it's clear that our form was sent correctly. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Hope you found this useful, and see you on the next time.